Travillian Next is a division of Travillian, a financial services specialist search and talent advisory firm. Since inception, the Travillian team has dedicated itself to enhancing the return on investment of a company's most important resource, its people.
Hello, hello. Welcome to another great episode of Travillian Next. Very, very happy to have today's guests. I've been trying to get Alana on an episode for years now. And finally, I booked her. And then also Micah Davis from Live Oak. Thank you, Micah, for being here. And I will go over to Alana Levine first. She's the Chief Revenue Officer for Fintel Connect, based up in Vancouver, Canada. And we've got to know each other pretty well over the last couple of years. And I just love what their company is doing, partnering with smaller banks, credit unions, and other fintechs to really help with the marketing and analytical side. So Alana, can you just give us just a quick overview of Fintel Connect and how you partner with banks and credit unions?
Well, firstly, Keith, thank you for having me. It has been a little while. I've been trying to make this work, but better late than never. And yeah, thrilled that Micah could join us as well. I think we'll have a fun discussion, so we're probably going to have to cut ourselves off at some point because we could talk for hours about marketing.
Maybe we'll have a part two, a sequel.
There you go. Stay tuned, everybody.
Just stay tuned.
So Fintel Connect focuses on the acquisition marketing side of things. When we work with banks, credit unions, fintechs, the primary motivation is helping them to more strategically acquire new customer relationships and increase product uptake in a more cost-effective way. We work in a specific type of marketing. For those not familiar with marketing, you have all kinds of tactics at your disposal from, Google and social and all these areas. We do one type of marketing called affiliate or influencer marketing. It's a pretty significant part of the pie because it's how people do their research online. They go to these sites like a NerdWallet or a Bankrate, or they're consulting these informational pages to figure out what financial products are right for them. And if your, bank or credit union's products are not part of the mix, it's hard to be part of that consideration set. And really, it's where these people are doing their research. So we basically help, build out exposure for our clients on these different outlets on a results basis for the most part. So running cost per acquisition campaigns where they help provide, product reviews, dedicated inclusion in articles and listicles. A piece that's come out of what we do in this type of marketing is more on the analytics side. Banks that aren't yet ready to really expand their digital, but really just need better transparency on what's actually working. So tracking what's happening in your online account opening funnel and whether people that you spent money to market to here are actually successfully opening accounts. So we help, create that transparency and end-to-end connectivity of your marketing. And then thirdly, which we'll probably touch on a little bit, is the compliance side. So, as marketing teams expand their marketing and work with these third-party placements, their compliance teams come in and say, whoa, how do we make sure that they're saying what they should be saying? And, how are you staying on top of the content that's out there about our brand? And so we actually built a solution that's not only being used now by our clients to track their own marketing, but actually for banking as a service banks that are expanding their fintech partnerships and realizing we got to keep a better eye on what our fintech partners are doing. The tool actually really helps with that too. So our vision as a business, how do we kind of create the best value so, our clients and banks in the space can really grow online, and how do we help contribute to a safer, better ecosystem from a marketing standpoint?
That's great. And no, the BAS, I just heard the BAS word and it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Yeah, buzzword. We work with a lot of BAS banks, and yes, they need to keep an eye on what's happening with their fintech partners. And when you have 20 or 30 partners, all with their own marketing people, it can be tough. So that's great to hear that you're working on a product, enhancing that product. And Micah, Live Oak Bank, I think I told you this before we started recording. It's always, at the top of lists, well-known, respected, performing banks, high-performing banks. And you've been there almost since the beginning. So you've seen it grow, from a smaller couple $100 million into over 10 billion now. mostly, I would think, through kind of your acquisition and your marketing efforts. You don't have branches. You don't do things the traditional way, small business banking. Can you give me just a little bit of your background? I think I said communications officer too, but you handle a lot of things there. So Live Oak is definitely one of our, we're fans. Let's just
awesome. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on the podcast. It's cool to be a part of this episode and learning a little about what you guys are doing as well. Yeah, so Live Oak was founded in 2008, right in the middle of the last major financial collapse, as a lender to veterinarians. So when we got our FDIC charter, we were nicknamed the doggy bank, which is kind of a cool term. And the model is kind of this inverted community banking model. Rather than being in a geographic location and lending to everyone in your MSA, we lend to anyone who's in the United States or the US territories. And then we were focused on very specific types of businesses. We call them verticals. So the model proved to be successful in the early days. And so we went from veterinarians to dentists and doctors and funeral home owners and investment advisory and chicken farmers. And now we're in like 35 different industries. Our most recent is HOAs or homeowners associations. Now, the primary focus of the bank is lending and focused on lending to small businesses through the SBA program. So Small Business Administration has the 7A loan, and we are the top lender for the last 5 years by dollar volume in the SBA program. So we do a lot of SBA lending, but we also do traditional lending and all the other traditional banking activities. And we support the growth of our lending business through working with folks like Fintel. So we have to be very smart with how we market online, given that we're nationwide and we're focused in these very specific niche markets. So every single dollar counts, and we spend a lot of time making sure that we're getting the right type of customer who wants a digital experience, wants to work with a bank that's in North Carolina, even though they might be in California or Washington or Kansas, and then figuring out all of the service delivery models to execute against that.
Wow. So yeah, it started with a doggy bank, and now 45 verticals. And I can imagine there's different marketing for every vertical. As I said before, I'm really a fan of, strategic decision making with analytical data. So Alana, can you tell me, how analytics, as you're working with your customers, how you talk to them about analytics and marketing as they're acquiring customers, as they're trying to figure out their niche, that kind of overview of where to focus on?
For sure. The first thing I would say when we talk to our different clients is understanding where they are in their digital journey, which I feel like we hear that term all the time, but it's a critical thing to consider, because we look at ourselves and what we do as what I would call second tranche. First tranche would be the critical foundational pieces you need to have in place in order to successfully deploy a digital strategy. So do you have an online account opening, and what does that experience look like, and what can your end customers or members expect when they engage with a product like that? Have you worked out the back end in terms of KYC, workflows? Do you know what potential bottlenecks could be before you even look at putting marketing dollars into the top of your funnel? I think that's the critical piece that we look for first. And then the important thing is, I say, don't ever spend on your marketing dollars unless you can actually map what's going to work and what's not going to work. If you can't see that marketing dollar or money you spent on a specific campaign, how it's ended up from a number of new accounts it's generated, what are the quality of those accounts over time? One of the biggest friction points is that a lot of the systems just don't talk to each other. So you've got maybe Google set up to track what's happening on your website. You've implemented a third-party account opening either with your core provider or a different third-party solution. And then you've got what's going on in your core for how you're actually looking holistically at that relationship with the customer or member. Those systems don't easily talk. And I think only now are a lot of these technologies realizing this is a pretty critical part. If they're going to start to see volume coming through these different funnels that you need to be able to have them talk to each other. So you can see marketing dollars that result in high value accounts. And then you know where to put more of your marketing dollars. So that's the first thing. And that's really then the second thing, means to the end for us to do what we do on the affiliate side. Banks love the idea of only having to pay for accounts that are successfully opened and meet criteria. It's basically free eyeballs on these sites. You're getting great endorsements and credibility building. A lot of our clients are looking at it from an SEO standpoint. They have newer brands to broader audiences they're looking to reach that just don't know who they are. So how do you build that credibility? To Micah's point, being a North Carolina-based bank, but you can bank someone in California and you can trust them, and they have that brand credibility, because if you Google them, you can see them in a lot of different places. That we're human, that's what we do. And so building that credibility, but then making sure that if you're actually only paying for the success through these campaigns, that piece of basically measuring end to end is really critical. So that's what I would say is, being able to map that journey end to end, and then understanding what your metrics are along the way. What is your application to completion rate? What is your approval rate? What is your average cost of acquisition? Which channel's performing best for you? And then what's the lifetime value of those relationships that you've generated? Those are the types of things that are going to help you be smarter with your marketing.
That's great. And Micah, kind of piggybacking off of that, for Live Oak, and you building this out over the last 10 plus years, it must be critical to be able to, you have to be able to track, see what's happening, and then be able to, I guess, change course pretty quickly. Now, a bank that at the beginning of their journey, piggybacking off what Alana said, what from the banking side, what type of advice would you give to a bank that's like, we really need to start putting our marketing dollars into acquisition online. We need to find new ways to retain our customers, reach a new audience. What type of advice as chief marketing officer for them would you have, with this experience at Live Oak?
Yeah, so I think the question I would ask first is, where are my customers that are my ideal customers? So, when we started working with Fintel, one of the things that was great, they understood both the compliance side of what we need to manage in the banking world, which is super helpful. So you can manage all of the various things that are happening in your digital ecosystem and not be worried about, having a disclosure that's out of date or a rate that should be updated. And so if you want to jump into the space where your customers actually are, you need to have some tools in your toolbox to be able to manage that. So that was one of the first things when we started working with Fintel that we really enjoyed. Now, that being said, the ability to target your customers where they are is the answer to the question. You need to be able to figure out, okay, so if my, target customer is, using NerdWallet to research best products, how am I in that mix? There's lots of sites like that. Bankrate, early days when we were doing Bankrate a long time ago, it was a very, it was a relatively new site, didn't have a ton of traffic. So we were one of the first banks that were using that quite frequently. So building trust, right? Especially with financial services products, how do you build trust? How do people, if they see your name on a list of 50 banks, they obviously know who, the big banks are. They know all the household names, and they're driving by branches, and they're going to see, a branch sign or, a bank sign. They're never going to see Live Oak Bank's sign because we don't have any, right? So the way that we overcome that is with other digital tactics, and they all fit together. So, Alana mentioned SEO. So how do you make sure that your website is easily findable for the person who's like, oh, I see that Live Oak Bank is one of the top rates for, a personal savings or business savings account. The first thing most people do is they Google you to find out, like, who are these people? Are they legit? What did they stand for? Where is North Carolina anyway? No offense to the geographically challenged. So thinking of that, the customer's actual buying journey, and then where do you want to place information about your brand, your company, your product in the middle of that? And so this is kind of the first thing you need to do is understand who your ideal customer is. If you want to attract, high school kids that are just graduating, they're going off to college and get them their very first checking account, where are those kids getting their information? Are they getting it from their parents? Are they getting it from their friends? Are they getting it from, other social networks? Are they using ChatGPT to say, hey, what's the best bank that I should use, given that I'm going to be moving out of state? And there's a whole source of, myriad sources, I should say, of information that's out there. And so you have to figure out how to get your message into that mix, one way or the other. And Alana already described some of the ways that you do that, right? You leverage the analytics, you figure out where your target audiences are, and then you start from there. And it's actually a pretty easy thing to, dip your toe in the water. You can target a very specific product set, or you can target a specific demographic or an audience, and you can just slowly turn the dial up as you build experience and know-how and start to see how things perform. So it's not as scary once you get going, and then eventually it's just what you do every day.
Yeah. And somebody who is 22 or 18 is definitely going to be using the internet or other resources differently than somebody who's maybe in their mid 50s or 60s or even 40 plus now. I read something or heard something the other day. The search engine for younger kids now is TikTok. It's not even Google.
Yeah.
They search
YouTube,
on
TikTok. And there's another interesting story, really quick. We got into rural lending. So we do a lot of activity in rural markets, and they have the highest amount of mobile searches and mobile activity, because oftentimes if you're getting a message in front of someone they're not driving into town to go sit with a bank, they're doing research on their phone. And so we see these interesting things that most people would say, hey, rural, it's not as sophisticated. Oh no, chicken farmers, they're very sophisticated. They're using apps, they're, scanning checks, they're doing all of the mobile banking activities that you'd expect someone to do in a business. And, I think the assumptions, when you go into something, you might think one way, but oftentimes it's the analytics that prove you either, right or wrong, which is why it's fun to kind of understand going in what your kind of assumptions are, and then allowing the data to validate, what worked and what didn't.
I would think chicken farmers are very astute. I mean, you have to buy chicken feed, futures, you have to ship, transportation. And chicken everywhere.
There's all kinds of interesting, in our world, we focus in the business space, right? So there's all kinds of behaviors that are seasonality wise, so certain types of industries are very busy in the summer and they slow down in the winter. And then there's some that are vice versa. Some are, and so understanding a little about who your audience is can help, to my point earlier of getting into a tactic or trying an idea out or moving forward with a campaign concept.
Can I ask a question, Micah? How do you guys, because I'm less so in the day-to-day, but how do you work closely with the owners of the different business lines within the bank? Because they're driving the numbers and they have a need, and it's almost like marketing has to deliver to those objectives and provide the insight, but it's a bit of a chicken and an egg when it comes
There you go.
There you go. Yeah,
I think I'm gonna get chicken.
Kick me off already.
That's right. It's a great partnership. So and this is where the interesting part of digital fits in. So going back to the comment that people are going to research you, they're going to use some channel, some tool, right? And they're going to want some type of a recommendation, especially true in the world of small business. So our loan officers and some of the leaders of the various industries that we're in, they spend a lot of time building relationships with kind of the other key suppliers that are in those markets. So think architects and builders and CPAs and attorneys and all of the various people that are in the surround sound of small business. And we build relationships with them. And we say, hey, if you hear of someone who's looking for capital to grow, expand, acquire, or do what they want to do in their business, give us send them our way. And so that's part of the tactic. But what happens on the ground is people jump onto their phone or onto the computer and they will search you out and figure out who you are. They're going to check out your YouTube. They're going to look at your social. They want to know, who is this company? I haven't heard of them. And so we partner with our lenders and leaders within the business to make sure that they have the air cover to go out there and do what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so we do a lot of like old school stuff and new school stuff all mixed up. We like to say that we're high tech and high touch. So we spend a lot of time in the trade show space. Like I think this year we'll do upwards of 200 plus trade shows. And we're in probably every single state doing a show at everything from a hotel lobby to a giant convention center and all points in between. And so that's so we can get out and build relationships with all those, call them centers of influence, if you will. And then from there, it's all of the digital tactics that support the customer's buying journey that we do that allows for, digital account openings, a big one, easily connect with the lender to have a conversation, being readily accessible, via phone or whatever. So we don't have like IVR services when people call in, they just actually answer the phone. We have some pretty funny calls where people will call in and say, oh, I wasn't expecting someone to actually answer the phone when I called you. And so these are things that we, supplement the digital marketing efforts with, where we try to bring those experiences together.
Yeah, and we've seen that over the last couple of years. People want technology, but they also want the personal touch. And that's what community banks, I think the perfect world, and that's what Live Oak does so well, is you offer the options of convenience, but also have that personal touch and customer service you don't get with a larger bank, probably, as a small business client. And it's becoming even more important. And then, a big shift we've been seeing, everybody's been talking about, has been liquidity and deposits. It's a war out there. And if you don't have a good growth acquisition plan, marketing wise, it's going to be hard, as deposits are moving so freely now and going towards higher rates, or customers are inundated with information, and you can move your account pretty quickly these days. You can move to a Live Oak or out of Live Oak. So how do you, use, Alana's company and products to be that high touch, but also, I guess, retain, acquire, and be a full-on kind of suite of high touch marketing efforts in this kind of war of deposits?
Yeah,
that's a long-winded question.
No, it's great because this is where we really love the power that Fintel provides to us, right? So the ability to connect with this influencer space. Influencer is a pretty broad term that people use in marketing, but anyone who's making a recommendation. And recommendations happen across so many different channels and websites and platforms, and so it's important that you get the right message into people's hands. And this is where Fintel allows us to do that at scale. Like, we could not do what we were doing today without their help, which is really cool. So the performance has been great, and then we can tweak what we're doing in terms of content, and what we see is actually driving accounts that are coming to the website, clicking on the new account opening experience, and going all the way end to end. And so that transparency of the customer's buying journey end to end is hugely helpful in this this fight to bring deposits in. Now, I would say the other part of that is I do think there's a brand component to this.
Oh, yes.
Right. So are you safe? Right. And one of the cool, we have these things we call them Live Oakisms. And one of them from our early days is safety and soundness, profitability and growth, in that order. And so we're a very conservatively managed bank. So having good liquidity positions and having a strong lending portfolio are really important to us, so that we can stand the test of time and make really good decisions for our customers. So this is kind of how we think about it. And having a brand that represents, trust and accountability and responsibility for people's money is hugely important. So this gets into some of that validation, and where I think the publisher space, influencer space can be extra powerful, because you have Alana mentioned this earlier, you have a secondary voice that says, hey, this is a legitimate company. Yes, they're in North Carolina. Nobody knows where Wilmington is, but they offer great rates, great products, great service. And so that becomes a way to validate what we're doing and the tactics that we're deploying. So these are They work hand in hand.
Well, my favorite athlete of all time is from Wilmington, Michael Jordan. So, but yeah, a lot of going off of that. And Micah, I'm glad you brought up brand because I started reading a book last year and I didn't finish it, but it's about becoming your customers as fans, not customers. I mean, fans stick with their teams. Fans, feel like they're part of the journey. They're loyal. And I'm a Mets fan, so you have to be loyal when they every year. Unfortunately, but I stick with them because I'm a fan. For banks and any small business really, or any business, having more fans, and I feel like when you're moving away from the customer label to fan label, Alana, how is that done? Is it done for banks through more of an interactive marketing effort? Of course, it's customer service, but there has to be some ways banks are working with you to really build their brand online also.
Yeah. I think it is a good point, actually. I think financial institutions, one of the things that we look for and we try and help them uncover if they haven't quite figured it out yet is the why. I think that was an easy one for us when we were working with Live Oak. They're very clear on their mission, very clear on where their value is and who their core audiences are. To build a brand, you really need to clearly understand the why and what are the key things that differentiate you. So, when we're helping to amplify that message out, we know what pillars we need to be standing on and helping arm these third-party marketing partners who we look at them as a microcosm audience. If we can't help them understand the why, what are the cool features that you have to offer? What makes you different from your competition? What's the reason that their audiences should consider, this product, this brand as a trustworthy, viable, solution for them that they can get behind? And so helping to define that's really critical. It's funny because we get a lot, like in the conversations we have where this is a very new channel to a marketer at a bank or credit union. They ask us, how do we control what they say? And, are we going to get the right to review it? And we say, yes, from a factual standpoint, it's absolutely critical that whatever they're saying to present information about, as Micah said, rates or, that the appropriate disclosures are there, or that the information about the product is correct, but you want them to be authentic. And, sometimes they're going to say the good, the bad, and the ugly. There are cons to everything. There are pros to everything. And guess what? Every bank doesn't want every man and their dog as their client because they just might not be the right fit. And so it's about finding the right types of, it's almost like a mutual relationship in a way. Yes, you want more customers. Yes, you want their deposits, but you also want them to become advocates and be a good fit so they stick around for a long time. And part of that's helping them understand who you are and really buying into it. And I think that's one of the things I think the affiliate channel does really well, and why I've been in it as long as I have is because it is a perfect marriage between almost like PR and advertorial, because they're not going to necessarily just shout from the rafters all the amazing things. They're going to be really, authentic about what you should know. And that's, I think, where the value is in helping build a real brand. That's not just your message, it's how other people are talking about you.
Yeah. And it feels like with today's technology and social media, it really is kind of a two-way street. And there's almost, you see on Twitter or, I guess TikTok, instantaneous kind of brand management back and forth. Amazon, they didn't deliver something, and all of a sudden Amazon is reaching out to you and offering $50. And so it's that instantaneous information. And you're right, people make decisions very quick. They Google search, they look at reviews, and then they decide if they want to go with that bank or go somewhere else. So no, this is fantastic, and I feel like we could talk about a lot of other subjects for hours and hours. But no, I just want to thank you both for being on this episode. I think it's incredibly important we get the word out on companies like Fintel Connect that can help smaller banks really compete out there in the digital world. And, it's only going to get tougher, I think. There's just going to be more information. There's so much information in people's faces. How do you really stick out? And then how do you track it? And then how do you see if your message is working, or do you have to change? And now, Micah, thank you very much. I think your tips are fantastic. So before I say goodbye, Alana, one tip for the audience out there, I guess call you, right? And you will speak with them about where to go.
No disclosure needed here. I'm not putting these guys up to it. But I appreciate how much of a fan you guys are. My tip would be, and I bet you I'm stealing Micah's, but don't be scared to get started. Like, you don't have to figure it out all at once. I always say Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was any marketing strategy. And you just kind of have to have a bit of faith and have controls in place. But yeah, don't be scared to get started, whatever way that looks.
That's great. And I guess, Micah, any tips out there for banks or credit unions kind of emulating Live Oak or hoping to start that journey?
I mean, I would agree. I do think you just have to start, and you will learn as you go. And I think also the customer expectations aren't changing. They're only going to become more, digitally centric. And if you don't start now, there's, you might regret that. So just go ahead, take the plunge and go for it.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday. We've become very spoiled as consumers and very picky. We're almost used to that Amazon service that we get instantaneous.
Yeah. It's not apples to apples anymore. We're living in an apples to oranges to bananas world, and
it is. That could be a good title for our next webinar.
There you go.
Apples to oranges, bananas world. But no, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Hope the audience gets something out of this where they can start that journey. But thank you both
for
being on the program.
Yeah,
appreciate it.